Canadian-American rugby game attracted nearly 40,000 fans to White City Stadium in London recently. Here are the stars of the event. The Canadian and American teams corralled from every branch of the Army. Players familiar to rugby fans everywhere. Teams line up prior to the game to meet some high-ranking Army officers. They stand at attention as a huge 50-piece American band plays the national anthems of Britain, America, and Canada. The kickoff. The first half of the game is being played with American rules, and American referees see they are kept. The boys in the white helmets are the Americans, and their running interference is a bit confusing to the Canadians. Here's a forward pass completed by the Canadians, but the receiver's nabbed before he can break away. An American end run was stopped before it got very far. The heavy Canadian line and alert backfield keep the Yanks' bag of tricks well tied up. Orville Burke snaps a long pass to Denny Whitaker, captain of the Canadian team, and the crowd are glad of some action in the first half. Wallace, the huge St. Bernard mascot of the Canadian Scottish Regiment, goes into action as the massed pipe bands of the Canadian Army Highland Regiment steal the show at half-time. Under the Canadian rules, the second half of the game was crammed with action. All the points of the 16-6 score were gathered in this period. Here's one of the 3 Canadian touchdowns scored after a beautiful forward pass. The most exciting forward pass of the afternoon was a Canadian attempt which was intercepted by the Yanks. A hard tackle and the ball was fumbled and dribbled over the goal line by Bill Turnbull of the Toronto Beaches. Glad we didn't have to explain that to our English friend. It was a nice play and the crowd loved it. This Canadian officer seems quite happy about the whole thing. After the game, Lieutenant General Stuart and Major General Lee go onto the field to present a silver teapot to Major Denny Whitaker, captain of the winning team. It was a great game. An exhibition at the National Gallery by Canadian official war artists was opened recently by Her Royal Highness the Duchess of Kent, who was greeted by the Honourable Vincent Massey. The paintings were the works of Canadians serving with the 3 services. The Honourable Vincent Massey paid a visit to Canadian Division, where he watched tanks provide cover for infantry advancing under mortar fire. The position taken, the infantry advanced under tank protection, past the High Commissioner's party to the next objective. Her Royal Highness the Princess Royal, Colonel-in-Chief of the Royal Canadian Signal Corps, paid the reinforcement unit a short visit. She inspected the men and afterwards watched demonstrations of Signal Corps work. Then, escorted by dispatch riders, she drove down a troop-lined road amidst the cheers of the men. Canadians listed in the New Year Honours received their awards at recent royal investitures held at Buckingham Palace. They included Regimental Sergeant Major George Travers of Verdun, Quebec, who received the British Empire Medal. Brigadier Patrick Kelly of Ottawa, Commander of the British Empire. Lieutenant Colonel J. Midhurst of Toronto, the Order to the British Empire. Captain James Stuart came with his father, Brigadier Stuart of Vancouver, who received the CBE. Colonel Peter Abel of Winnipeg, the OBE. For long and faithful service, Major Collier of Montreal received the MBE. Lieutenant Colonel Bell Irving of Vancouver, the OBE. Lieutenant Colonel Klain of Saskatoon received the OBE. Major Bethune of Halifax, the MBE. Sergeant Lilly of St. Thomas, Ontario, the BEM. Captain E.S. O'Toole of Montreal received the Military Cross. Major Alice Sorby of Winnipeg received the MBE. 2 Canadian friends came with Lieutenant Colonel Dennison of Ottawa, who received the OBE. Lieutenant Colonel J.E. Chaput of Montreal received the OBE. Major Paul Lieben of Montreal, Military Cross and Bar. He brought his wife, who was with the English VADs. And many others received royal recognition. The Lady Nelson hospital ship, a casualty herself in the early stages of the war, now plies between distant battlefields and Canada, transporting Canadian wounded home. While on her regular run, the Lady Nelson met with enemy action. With a gaping hole in her bow, she limped from mid-Atlantic into the shallow, muddy Jamaica harbor, where she sank. On being refloated, she was commissioned by the Canadian government as a hospital ship and has been playing a leading role in the war ever since. This is her first voyage to the historic Naples harbor to take home wounded British and Canadian soldiers. One of the little-known jobs in the Army is that of the REME telecommunication section, which keeps wireless sets and other delicate instruments in repair. Composed of 3 Z2 lorries and necessary stores to replace worn-out radio equipment, their primary job is to keep all wireless sets up to specifications. Power generators are set up and the work begins. Since the division went into action, 1,000 sets of 9 different types have been repaired. Completely mobile, Z2 lorries are able to work well forward, but their location must be carefully sighted. Their equipment must be protected from the blast of our own guns, and at the same time they must be saved from enemy shelling. The work of the Z2 section is vitally important, for in modern war, communications must not fail. Somewhere in England, Canadian and British airborne troops queue up as they emplane for a mass jump. No fan or mock aperture this trip, and as the planes with men and gliders with supplies take to the air, the eyes of spectators follow them up. There they go. Mottle-colored chutes with equipment, white chutes for the men, all in a seemingly confused formation, but all according to plan. Heads well forward, knees together, legs bent and eyes on the ground, the men brace themselves for the landing. A 3-point landing is not the approved way of landing in this game. They float through the air in exercise now. In the months to come, men of Canada, men of Britain, men of all the United Nations will join in the mass jump on Hitler's Fortress of Europe.